Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. A few weeks ago, I traveled out of the country for the first time in my life. The best word I could find to describe my experience was definitely adventure. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Now, it took us about 23 hours to arrive in Delhi, India, and 30 hours to travel back to Louisville, Kentucky. Let's just say I didn't get any sleep on any of the flights, and my fear of using plane bathrooms is completely gone because you have no other choice. So let me take you on this journey with me. The flights were long, but at least I had an aisle seat. Unfortunately, some of the people who were sitting beside me either wouldn't stop talking to me or they would not stay in their own space and they kept coming over into mine, which is exhausting and a big pet peeve of mine, but I tried to stay calm. Now, get this, on the flight from Paris to Delhi, we were about halfway through, and the lady that was in the middle seat next to me, she asked me to switch her seats. Like, she wanted me to take the middle seat and her to take my aisle seat. Now, I tried to be really kind, but I had to say no because there was a reason I picked the aisle seat, and it's called anxiety. I was really stunned when she asked me after she was returning from the bathroom to move to that middle seat. I honestly at first didn't know what to say, and I was kind of confused. And after I said no, she was not happy with me. I had already been up for like 20 plus hours and the middle seat was not how I envisioned spending the remainder of that flight. We finally arrived in Delhi around 2 a.m. their time, which Delhi is 9.5 hours ahead of Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I started the trip the day before. We met up with some of our partners who drove us from the airport to our hotel. Now, I got the privilege of riding with the same driver 4 separate times during the whole trip. And each time I learned something new about him. And when your personality likes control, finding out you're riding with a new driver, not to mention the traffic in India was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And to add on to that, you're in a new country, you haven't slept in 30 plus hours, and it's the middle of the night. Plus, we may have gotten lost or turned around a couple times, and we even had to wait for road workers to finish part of the road. Yes, you heard that right. Our driver told us that they were building the road and it would be done in about 10 minutes. Now, I can look back and laugh at this now and this experience, but in that moment, fear definitely consumed me. Finally, we made it to the hotel safe and sound, and I was so ready for bed. The lack of sleep is not helpful in situations like this, but I will say that this driver, his name was Lucky, he got us there safely to every place we went, and it was always an adventure. Honestly, I'm kind of impressed with his driving skills after I discovered he learned to drive from YouTube videos. The traffic and the roads over there were no joke. I don't even know that I would have been able to drive successfully in that mess, even with all my driving experience. So, after getting some much needed rest, we were able to visit one of the busy markets and see some of the culture. That was the moment I will never forget. Meeting some of the people, seeing how they live will stick with me forever. We got to ride in rickshaws, which was a really cool experience. And the rickshaws took us around the market and we got to see where some of the families create and decorate pottery. We even got to go into some of the areas where they're doing that. And the skills that they have to create this handmade pottery, they all look exactly the same, was incredible. We saw one guy making stools that were an exact replica of each other. It was almost like they were created in a factory, but they weren't. It was all created by hand. After the pottery was created, there was other guys on the sides of the street that were painting the pottery by hand, and each and every piece looked the same. It was truly amazing to see. We ended our time at the market by visiting a school that one of my new friends leads. She welcomes many children for hours each evening to teach them along with some of her helpers. We had the privilege to meet them. We listened to them sing songs, they shared things that they had learned, and we heard stories about how the school came to be. You could see the care and the heart that this team has for these kids. And I know that this school is going to change the lives of so many children and families who may not be able to afford education. So the next 6 days, they were filled with classes and education in areas of medical and emotional trauma healing. I was a part of the medical team, and we were able to teach the nationals everything from proper hand washing to how to deliver a baby in emergency situations. The skills that these men and women learned will definitely help them as they return back to their villages, where most of them are so many miles away from a clinic. In between these sessions, I had some of the most meaningful conversations with some of my now new friends. Hearing their experiences broke my heart, but also encouraged me at the same time. It was time after time that I heard of the hardships that they were going through, but at the same time, they were the most positive, encouraging, caring, kind, and respectful individuals. These were people you wanted to be around because their joy was so infectious. One of the moments that sticks out to me the most was one of the ladies in the training. After the first day, we noticed she wasn't taking any notes and it felt like she wasn't really interested. After that, we asked the table leader if they noticed that too, and he said she was illiterate, so she wasn't able to read or write. We did find out that she knew her numbers, and so we helped her as much as we could to understand what was being taught. Towards the end of the training, we had a skills day where they could practice all the skills they had learned because those skills would be on the test the next day. This lady was struggling to read the blood pressure cuff, and that's when one of my American teammates remembered she had an extra pair of reading glasses in her luggage. So she ran up to the room and grabbed the reading glasses, brought them back down to the conference room, and gave them to the lady. When those glasses were given to that lady who was struggling, she put them on, and it was like a light bulb went off. At that moment, it was like everything clicked. She could read the dial, even the small numbers. And that made all the difference in the world. It amazed me how a pair of reading glasses from the dollar store changed this lady's life. She probably would have not passed the test and got a star on it, but the next day she took that test and she passed it and got a star on her certificate, which that's the highest level they can receive. After receiving the glasses, she carried them around with her everywhere. If we took pictures, she always put the glasses on. And after graduation, she went up to the lady who gave them to her and she thanked her, filled with happy tears in her eyes, which in turn made everyone else cry. I'm sure that's not the only story like this, but that was definitely one of my favorites. And maybe one day I'll get to hear more stories of how this training helped them take care of their villages and even them training others to come alongside and help people medically. I know the same can be said for the emotional trauma training because I heard how people had begun their healing journeys and they were learning tools to not only help their own journey, but to help others walk through that healing as well. Overall, this was an amazing trip and honestly got me thinking a lot about how thankful I am to live in America and how blessed we are. If I'm being honest, I already struggled being around people who are negative all the time, but it feels like even more so now. I don't have a lot of empathy for people who have a cushioned life but are negative, impatient, entitled, and rude, especially when they say they're Christians. As Christians, we're supposed to be recognized by our love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the standard that some Christians have lived by recently. And that breaks my heart. We need to refocus our eyes on things above rather than our preferences. After this trip, coming back to the States became kind of like a reverse culture shock. It was hard to ignore the negativity that consumes so much of American culture. And I know I can't change anyone else, but my life has been changed. And I never want to become ungrateful for the things that I do have. Yes, I have struggles. We all do. There is so much pain in this world, but we have to find ways to keep moving forward and trying our best to do the next right thing. And if we don't always get it right, being humble enough to learn from it and grow is so important. So, to my new friends all the way across the world in India, if you're listening to this, be encouraged. I am so grateful for your friendship. And thank you so much for sharing your stories with me. You are a blessing. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.